Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to all of you. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining. And we will do the introduction to Bhagavad Gita today. Also, it'll be an introduction to Bhakti Yoga. Now, I'm sure all of you have heard or have an idea about the Mahabharata that took place more than 5,000 years ago. And it was a war between Pandavas and the Kauravas. Pandavas, the religious ones, and Kauravas, headed by Duryodhan, were the irreligious ones. And at the time of the war, just before the war began, the big Mahabharata war, Arjuna approached Krishna. Now, Krishna was driving the chariot of Arjuna. And Arjuna, when he saw, he's in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he wanted to see who are the ones who have come to fight against him. So he requested Krishna to take the chariot in the center so that he could see who all are there. And that is where, when Arjuna, when he saw that his grandfather, his teacher, his cousins, brothers, so many of his relatives were on the opposite side, waiting to fight against him, he became very weak. Weak in the sense he became morose. He became very sad. And he told Krishna, how can I fight? These are all my loved ones. And that is the time when Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, actually for our benefit. So, in fact, Srila Prabhupada says that there are three ways to receive knowledge. One is called Pratyaksha Praman, which means we get the knowledge through sense perception, right? Let's say a very nice example. We take a cup of water. It's a clear cup of water. And then we put a stick in that. When we look at the stick, it appears to be a little bent. But is the stick bent? No. But it appears to be bent because it is in the water. So that is learning spiritual knowledge through sense perception is not the right way, because our senses are defective. So we cannot rely on that. Another option of receiving knowledge is Anuman Praman, which means conclusion which is based on evidence or assumptions. I assume, I presume. That is also not the right way to receive at least the spiritual knowledge. So Srila Prabhupada explains the best way is Shabda Praman. That means word of authority. Now, who is the authority? Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is the authority. That's why in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains how we should receive this knowledge of Bhakti Yoga, of this Bhagavad Gita. It is through Parampara. Krishna spoke it to Brahma, Brahma spoke it to Narada, Narada spoke it to Vyasa. This is how the knowledge has been coming down. So Shabda Praman is very, very important. This is how we should receive spiritual knowledge. Now, if we notice ourselves, we will see that all human beings have 4 defects. Now, in other words, we are defective parts, defective products. How? Because according to the scriptures, it explains that we have imperfect senses. For instance, if I remove my glasses, it's very hard for me to see or read. And I need these pair of glasses to be able to see properly. Imperfect senses. Hearing. I cannot hear what's going on in my neighbor's house because my ears are not powerful enough. So first is we have imperfect senses. Number 2 is we make mistakes. Is there anyone who has not made a mistake in their life? No, everybody makes mistakes. Sometimes we repeat those mistakes. The third is we have tendency to cheat. We may not cheat, but the tendency is there to cheat. And the fourth one is we are in illusion. What is the illusion? That I'm going to live forever. I am this body. Everything belongs to me. All that is illusion. So having these four defects, we are considered to be imperfect people. Now, imperfect people cannot give perfect knowledge. Perfect knowledge comes from perfect source, which is the Supreme Lord. So, the Bhagavad Gita is actually an owner's manual for human beings. This, just like every machine or car or gadgets, they come with owner's manual. Similarly, this machinery, which is the body, comes with an owner's manual, which is called the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Now, there are 5 subject matters that are covered in the whole Bhagavad Gita, 18 chapters, 700 verses. And what are those 5 subjects? Who is God? We learn who is God, that is Krishna, the Supreme Lord. Who are we? The spirit soul. Talks about material nature, eternal time, and karma. Now, all these 4 are eternal, but karma is one which can be changed based on our activities. The actions that we perform is going to decide on the reactions for the future. So these are the 5 subject matters. Now, if you notice, the title of the book is Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad means Bhagwan, which is the Supreme Lord, and Gita means song. So it is song of God. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, whenever Krishna speaks, it starts with Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Uvacha means said. Who said? Bhagavan, which means the Supreme Lord has spoken. Srila Prabhupada says that anyone who wants to learn Bhagavad Gita or who wants to learn about Bhakti Yoga should always at least have the basic faith. The basic faith that there is God, and that I have heard that Bhagavad Gita is spoken by God. If we have that basic faith, then we can build up on that faith by hearing all the instructions that are given in the Bhagavad Gita. That is why, just like, let me give you an example. If I have never seen my father in my life, I don't know who he is, and I want to know, who is my father? Who would be the best person to guide me? I mean, I can do my own research. I can go to my neighbors, my relatives. I think there's something called family tree or something, whatever I may do. But the perfect knowledge about who my father is can come only from my mother, because she's the only one who knows who my father is, even though she cannot give proof. Similarly, it is said that the Bhagavad Gita is like the mother, and that mother is giving us knowledge about who our Supreme Father is. So Prabhupada says that the Bhagavad Gita should be read, heard, understood very scrutinizingly with a devotee of Lord Krishna, not with someone who has personally motivated interpretations that, oh, in my opinion, this is what Krishna says, or according to me. No. As I told you, we are imperfect people, so we cannot interpret or, give some our own opinions about who is Krishna and what is in the Bhagavad Gita. In the scriptures, the very first verse comes is Athato Brahma Jigyasa. That means now inquire about the truth. Human life is meant for inquiring. Who am I? Why am I suffering? What am I doing in this material world? Where is my eternal home? And how do I go back to the eternal home? These are the inquiries that can help one become self-realized. And that is the reason we human beings have philosophical intelligence, so that we can use it in the right way. So the essence of the Bhagavad Gita is actually of all the Vedas. When you take all the Vedas, all the four Vedas, and you just like, there is in the market, we get a rose essence, right? So one way is that I can grow a rose garden and then pluck those rose petals and then squeeze them and take out an essence of that. The same essence with all that hard work actually can be got in the small bottle of rose essence. So similarly, instead of reading all the Vedas, which we may not be able to complete in one lifetime, the essence of all the Vedas is Bhagavad Gita. It is condensed into these 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada, a Sanskrit scholar, and also coming down in strict parampara, the disciplic succession, he is the one who translated Bhagavad Gita as it is, without any interpretations, as Krishna spoke them. Now let's get an overview of what the whole Bhagavad Gita is all about and what are we going to cover in all the 18 chapters. You see, it's important that we hear Bhagavad Gita with an open mind. And if we like it, we take it. If we don't like it, it's okay. It's no big deal at all. You see, we can find answers to all the questions that we may have. All the questions. Answers are there in the Bhagavad Gita. And what is the end result of understanding Bhagavad Gita? One becomes content, one becomes happy, one becomes satisfied, and one becomes peaceful. And I'm telling you from my experience, I have been, teaching Bhagavad Gita for almost 35 years now, and there has never been a time where, I have felt depressed or dissatisfied. No, because the knowledge from the Bhagavad Gita helps me to understand how the karma works. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that just like the seasons come and go, summer and winter seasons, similarly, happiness and distress, they come and go. So when we are distressed, we don't get upset, we don't get depressed. Why? Because we understand that is part of life. So let's see what is an overview of all the 18 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. In the very first chapter, we see that Arjuna, he's very confused. He is lamenting, you see. The very first verse of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, verse number 1, is spoken by Dhritarashtra, the blind king, who was the father of all the irreligious 100 sons that he had. And it was because of him that this whole Mahabharata took place, because he did not give good spiritual education to his children. They were very materialistic and they adopted irreligious ways to, gain wealth and power and etc. So the very first verse is by Dhritarashtra, who was a blind king. It is said he was not only materially blind, but he was also spiritually blind. He had absolutely no idea about Krishna consciousness. So the first verse is Dhritarashtra Uvacha. That means Dhritarashtra said, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. You see, Samaveta Yuyutsava, Mamaka Pandavascheva, Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. So Dhritarashtra, he's inquiring from his secretary Sanjaya, who was given the spiritual vision while sitting in the palace with Dhritarashtra. He could see what was going on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He had that spiritual vision given to him by his spiritual master. So here, Dhritarashtra, we can see his state of mind. He is very worried because he says, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetra. That means he knows that the war is taking place in Kurukshetra, which is a place of religion, which means the religious people will win the battle. And he knows that, and still he is hoping that his sons are going to win the battle. That's what he's hoping. But now he's inquiring from his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do? My sons and the Pandavas, they have gathered together in the battlefield. What did they do? He's curious to know, because at heart he knows that his children are going to die because they are irreligious people. First of all, it's a place of pilgrimage. Kurukshetra is a place of pilgrimage. Pandavas are religious people, and Krishna is with them. Krishna, the Supreme Lord, is with the Pandavas. So wherever there is Krishna, there is victory. Now he knew, Dhritarashtra knew, but still he's hoping that his sons will win the battle, which of course does not happen. So the whole first chapter is about, all those who have gathered there to fight against the Pandavas, and they are blowing their conch shells, they are announcing the start of the war, etc. And Arjuna is lamenting, and in chapter 2, that is when Krishna starts speaking the Bhagavad Gita. He starts giving instructions to Arjuna. The first lesson he gives to Arjuna is, you are not this body. Dehi no asmin yatha dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara tatha dehantara praptir dhiras tatra na muhyati. He tells Arjuna that just as he uses the word, not condition, embodied soul, just as the embodied soul, which means the soul which is inside the body. Just as the embodied soul continuously passes from boyhood to youth to old age, similarly, at the time of death, the soul goes into another body. So he's indirectly telling Arjuna, why are you lamenting? All these relatives of yours, they are not the body, they are the spirit soul. And once their body dies, these souls are going to live eternally and they will go on to next body. He tells Arjuna, na jayate mriyate va kadachit, that this soul, there is no birth, no death, it is eternal. It's just that it is going from one body to another. Let me give you an example. When we go to a new city, we don't have a house. So we rent an apartment, right? So when we rent an apartment, we sign a lease. It is for a 1 year or 2 years or whatever, we sign a lease. Now, when we live in that apartment, we cannot call that our own house. Why? Because it is on lease. We are giving rent to somebody. It belongs to someone else. Similarly, the soul is in this body on lease. It's going to be here. And when it is time, based on our karma, when it is time to leave the body, the soul is going to leave the body and go. And guess what is the situation of the body? The body has no value once the soul leaves the body. As long as the soul is in the body is very, very valuable. In fact, there was a scientist, Harry Monson. He did research and he found out that once the soul leaves the body, the dead body, the value of the dead body is $5.60. Can you imagine? This body is only $5.60 when the soul leaves the body. But when the soul is in the body, this body is, you can't put a value to it. Because of the soul, we are able to use our senses. We can see, we can hear, we can walk, we can talk, we can eat, we can do everything. But once the soul leaves, body is useless. So from the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches Arjuna that there are two bodies. One is this gross body that we can see with our eyes, and the other is the subtle body. Subtle body includes mind, intelligence, and false ego. That is the subtle body. And in the heart, This is where the subtle body is situated, along with the spirit soul and the super soul, which is the Supreme Lord in the form of Paramatma, is in the body. Now, chapter 3, we learn about Karma Yoga. You know, what is karma, what is akarma, what is vikarma, what actions we should perform, what actions we should not perform, what happens, you know, when we do bad things or good things, the reactions, etc. But the best part is Krishna gives a solution how to lead a karma free life, which means we do not accumulate good or bad karma. We just live a life which is karma free, which means no more reactions. He tells Arjuna, Yagnarthat karmano nyatra lokoyam karma bandhanaha tad artham karma kantaya mukta sangha samachara. He says that work done as a sacrifice for the Lord has to be performed. Otherwise, the work causes bondage. No one likes to be bound up by ropes or chains or anything. We want to be free. So he says, if we want mukta sangha samaja, if we want to have mukti, liberation, we want to free ourselves from bondage, then our work should be performed as a sacrifice for the Lord. And of course, he also gives a hint about the food that we eat. He says, Yagna Shishtasina Santo Muchyante Sarvakilbishe Bhunjate Tveyagham Papam. Now we all know the meaning of papam. It means sin. So he says, Krishna says that when we eat food without offering it to him, we are eating only sin. So if we want to lead a sin-free life, then whatever we eat should be first offered to the Lord. Now, in chapter 4, we come to know about the history of the Bhagavad Gita. How old is the Bhagavad Gita? Normally, when we ask people, how old is the Bhagavad Gita? They say 5,000 years old. Because that's when, you know, the battlefield of Kurukshetra took place. That's when Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita. You know, this is the general, what you call, general idea, right? But in chapter 4, Krishna says that imam vivasvate yogam proktavan aham avyayam. He says, I first spoke this knowledge to the sun god Vivaswan, that is 120 million years ago. Now, yogo nashtaha parantapa, he tells Arjuna, because this knowledge was getting lost, I am re-speaking the Bhagavad Gita to you, Arjuna. So 5,000 years ago, Bhagavad Gita was re-spoken, originally 120 million years ago. And there is a way to receive the knowledge. Krishna says, Evam paramparaya praptam imam rajashayo vedu. He says that this spiritual science, Krishna calls Bhagavad Gita as spiritual science. It's not a religious book. It's spiritual science, which gives us knowledge on how to become self-realized. So he says that one should receive it in parampara, in strict disciplic succession, which means the teacher has to be bona fide, certified. This is how we receive perfect knowledge. Now, chapter 5, Krishna repeats Karma Yoga. Why? Because karma is very, very important. Now, God, soul, nature, and time cannot be changed. That's eternal, cannot be changed. But karma definitely can be changed. And that's why there are 2 chapters on Karma Yoga in the Bhagavad Gita. So in chapter 5, Krishna talks in more detail how to perform our actions in Krishna consciousness. He says that Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmane Gavi Hastine Suni Cheva Swapakicha Panditaha Samadarshina. He explains how we can come to a stage where we are Samadarshina. We have equal vision for everybody. And we become a Pandita. Pandita means a learned person with the help of knowledge. But towards the end of chapter 5, as I was telling you before we started the class, Krishna gives a peace formula, how to be peaceful. It's a formula, it's a secret formula. And what does he say? He says, Bhoktaram Yagna Tapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwara Suridam Sarva Bhutanam Gnatvamam Shantim Richati. Shanti means peace. He says, if one can understand that Krishna is the Bhokta, he's the enjoyer, he's the supreme lord of all planets, all demigods, of everybody. He is our best friend. Imagine he is traveling with us in our hearts from one body to another, to another, to another, just to guide us, just to help us, just to, if we desire to get knowledge, to guide us how to get the knowledge about him and, of course, about ourselves. So that is a peace formula from chapter 5. In chapter 6, Krishna talks about dhyana yoga, meditation, right? He explains how one should meditate, what is the best way, that one has to go to the forest, lay kusha grass, put deer skin, sit erect, and with eyes half closed, half open, focusing on the tip of the nose, and then meditate on the Lord. Now, this is not practical for us, right? We are living in the city, we are living with the family, we have jobs and business or whatever. It's not possible for us to give up everything and go to the forest, right? And it's not even safe because there are so many animals there. And above all, we cannot do without the phone, right? We have to leave the phone behind. We cannot take iPads, AirPods, phone, nothing at all. You see, that's not practical for us in Kali Yuga. So, so my question was that why is Krishna giving all this knowledge when we cannot do it? It's impractical. It's for those who want to do it. Krishna is giving that knowledge. But towards the end of chapter number 6, Krishna gives a summary. He says, Yogi nam api sarvesham, topmost yogi, mad gatinantar atmana. That the topmost yogi is not one who is meditating in the forest, but one with the help of knowledge, by chanting, is able to realize me in the heart. And that we can do it sitting at home also. We don't need to go to the forest for that. Now, in chapter 7, Krishna talks about 4 kinds of people who surrender to him and 4 kinds who do not surrender unto him. So that we can think about this, contemplate on it, and think which category do we fall on, right? Those who surrender or those who do not surrender. So first he says those who do not surrender. He says, No mam dushkritino mudha prapadyante naradhama mayaya aprita jnanam asuram bhavam ashita. There are 4 kinds who do not surrender. Grossly foolish. He says those who are foolish people, they don't surrender unto me. Those whose intelligence is lost. Those who are lowest among mankind, and those who have demoniac nature. He says these 4 do not surrender unto me. So the good news is there are 4 kinds who surrender unto him. And he says, Chaturvidha bhajante mam jana sukritino Arjuna. Sukritino means, he says there are 4 kinds of pious people who surrender unto me. You see? So, in other words, Krishna is saying that those who surrender unto me are pious people. And who are those? He says those who are in distress, those who are in need of knowledge, those who are in need of money, you see, and those who are inquisitive. All these 4 kinds of people surrender unto me. You see, so we can be any of those. If we are in distress, go to Krishna. If we want money, go to Krishna. If we want knowledge, go to Krishna. If we are inquisitive, what is Bhagavad Gita? Who is Krishna? Go to Krishna. These are the 4 kinds of people who surrender unto Krishna. So this is what he talks about in chapter 7. In chapter 8, he talks about how to attain him, how to attain Krishna, how to go to his kingdom, which is called Goloka Vrindavan. in the spiritual world, it's a Vaikuntha, topmost Vaikuntha planet. He says, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajat ante kalevaram. Tam tam evati kontaya sada tad bhava bhavita. He says, whatever one remembers at the time of death, to that stage one attains without fail. So that is why every class I keep insisting on chanting. When we chant on a daily basis, then we get into that practice. And what is the end result? At the time of death, because we have practiced all our lives, we are able to chant at the time of death and go back to the spiritual world. So this is how Krishna says you can attain me. In fact, some like to go to heavenly planets, but in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Brahma bhuvana loka punaravartino Arjuna. Even if when one goes to the highest heavenly planet, which is Brahmaloka, one will have to come back into this material world. Only when one goes to the spiritual world that one does not come back down and take another birth. Now, chapter 9 is most confidential knowledge. When I heard this, my question was, but it's open, it's there in the Bhagavad Gita, anyone can read that. So how is it most confidential? It is most confidential because one may read it, one may hear it, but one may not be able to understand it completely. That's why it's very confidential. So when there is a sincere soul, someone who sincerely wants to understand the Bhagavad Gita and approaches a bona fide teacher, then Krishna bestows the mercy so that that particular devotee can understand this most confidential knowledge. And Krishna tells in chapter 9, Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dhridavritaha. That Satatam means always. One should always chant, because we don't know when will be the last moment for us. When is the death going to strike us? We don't know. Do we have an appointment with death? No, we don't. We don't know at all. In fact, when I was in India, as soon as I reached on 3rd September, I came to know that my very, very dear friend, a devotee of Krishna, was in the hospital in ICU. So I went immediately to the ICU to see her. And out of happiness, she had tears in her eyes. And we were so happy to see each other. Now, many times I've stayed in her house in Vrindavan whenever I go. I usually go twice a year. And I would stay in her house and she would feed me nice prasad, and we would talk, and we would go to the temple early in the morning together at 4 in the morning. And, we would, it was very good association. So when she saw me, she started crying. I said, don't worry, you will be fine. And after a few days, she was discharged from the hospital. And she came to the temple guest house. So we have a guest house where I was also staying. She came to the temple guest house, and I went to see her again. And then we talked for a while. She was very weak, but we talked. And then again, I went to see her in that guest house room. I had bought some gifts for her, which I always do every year. So I gave her, and she was so happy. And then I went to Mumbai. And there I got the news that she left her body. I was in such shock. I just met her a few days ago, and I never thought that would be the last time I would see her. It took me a few days to come out of that shock, because I thought that she was improving, her health was improving, and she's going to recover. But you never know. No one knows when will be the last moment. So Krishna says, Satatam kirtayanto mam. So I called up her husband, and he said she was chanting. She was chanting when she was leaving her body. She was so peaceful. She was chanting, and then she left her body. This is what Bhagavad Gita teaches us to do, to mold our lives in such a way that we are able to think of Krishna all the time. And that is possible only if we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, on a daily basis. Just like we eat every day, we sleep every day, we work every day. Similarly, we should chant every day because it's going to help us. You see? So in chapter number 10, Krishna talks about his opulences so that there is some interest that develops in us, just like if I come to know that the president is my friend, the president of the US is my friend, immediately it'll be like, oh, wow, right? And we know how powerful the president is, so immediately there will be appreciation. So similarly, Krishna is telling us about his opulences so we can go wow, and we can develop that loving relationship with him. And he says, aham sarvasya prabhavo mataha sarvam pravartite iti matva bhajante mam. He says that everything, everyone emanates from me. That means everything comes from Krishna. How powerful he is. This is just to let us know, that this is his position. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he says, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam. He says that those who worship me with love and devotion, he says, I give them the intelligence by which they can know me. So with the intelligence that we have right now, it's not possible to understand Krishna. We have to have the mercy that comes from him, and that mercy will come from him that will help us to understand him is only when we worship him with love and devotion. And the first step to Bhakti Yoga is chanting the holy names of the Lord. Now, when he says everything belongs to me, everything comes from me, in chapter 11, he gives a demonstration. So till chapter 10, he gave the theory part. Now in chapter 11, he's showing the practical. He shows his universal form, which is called Virat Roop, right? In which he shows Arjuna, everything is within him. All the demigods, the sun, the moon, the planets, everything is within the body of Krishna. This is how he gives the proof that he is actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then in chapter 12, which is entitled Devotional Service, Krishna explains how to perform devotional service. He gives options. I remember when I was in school, we used to have the question paper with multiple answers. There were choices and we could choose, which we think is the right answer. Now, if we have studied well, we'll be able to figure out what's the right answer. But if we haven't studied, then we'll just do inamo and just pick one and then, answer it, which may be incorrect. Most probably will be incorrect. So here in chapter 12, also Krishna gives options that, okay, you can, worship me. If you cannot, then take on my knowledge, then you work for me. So all different options he gives in chapter number 12 so that we can engage properly in devotional service. Chapter 13 is all about material nature. Chapter 14 is about modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Now, after giving knowledge about these three different modes, then Krishna says best thing is to transcend these modes and come to the mode of pure goodness. Mam yoga bhicharena bhakti yogena sevte sagunan samityaten brahma bhuyaya kalpate. He says that those who worship me with full devotion, unfailing in all circumstances, they are the ones who can transcend these three modes of material nature. So, he of course gives us knowledge that, food, understanding, determination, sacrifice, they all fall in different modes, and how to work under the mode of pure goodness. Now, chapter 15 is Yoga of the Supreme, where he, in the middle of the chapter, verse number 15, he says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sanivishto, matah smritir jnanam apohanam cha. Vedescha sarvir aham eva vedyo, vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. What does that mean? He says, I am situated in everyone's heart. There's the proof. Krishna says, I am situated in everyone's heart. And he says, from me, that means from Krishna comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness, which means he's giving us three options. What do we want to do? We want to remember him, forget him, or we want his knowledge. What do we want? Based on our choice, he helps us and guides us. Now, if I choose, I don't want to remember Krishna, boom, he will make the situation such that I'll forget him. But if I choose, I want his knowledge, he will give me the opportunity to take on knowledge about him. You see, if I want to remember him, he'll make it possible so that I can remember him. You see, and then he says, Vedas just surveyed. He says, I am the compiler of the Vedas, and I am to be known from the Vedas. You see, so when Krishna says he's the compiler of the Vedas, and as I said in the beginning of the class, that Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the Vedas. So it is coming from Krishna himself. Chapter 16 talks about divine and demoniac natures, so that we can evaluate ourselves and see in which category do I fall. Is my nature divine or is demoniac? And then based on that, we can work on it. Chapter 17 is divisions of faith, and chapter 18 is the summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita. And there is one verse which summarizes the whole Bhagavad Gita. And that is chapter 18, verse number 66. Sarva dharman parityagya mam ekam sharanam raja. Aham tum sarva papebhyo moksha ishyami ma suchaha. Krishna says, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. And what will be the result? He says, I will take away all your sinful reactions. All the sins that we have committed in the past, he is going to clean that slate and make it zero. No more sinful reactions. He says, Ma suchaha, do not fear. He's giving a promise that if we abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto him, he will remove all the sinful reactions. You see, that is a guarantee he is giving us. And what is the first step of surrender? Is chanting the holy names of the Lord. That is the best form and the easiest form of surrender. So, Bhagavad Gita, excuse me, Bhagavad Gita can easily help someone to become permanently happy and peaceful. It's not that I'm happy today, I'm sad tomorrow, I'm peaceful today, I'm not peaceful tomorrow. No, permanently. So if we hear Bhagavad Gita in a systematic way, just like today, I have explained the introduction to Bhagavad Gita and to Bhakti Yoga. From next Sunday onwards, I'll start with chapter 1. So when we hear Bhagavad Gita in a systematic way, chapter-wise, with at least the basic faith that Krishna is the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, with the help of knowledge, we will be able to make this faith more firm, right? And best part is, what attracted me to Bhagavad Gita as it is was, Krishna doesn't talk about blind faith. I say, Christina, you must follow this. No, I'm not going to give you any knowledge. You must follow this. You must chant. No. It has to be based on knowledge, not blind faith. So systematically, when we hear Bhagavad Gita, then we are able to reach a stage where we get permanent happiness and peace. So along with hearing Bhagavad Gita, along with chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it'll help us to become self-realized. So this is how we can say, we can summarize the Bhagavad Gita in a very brief way, and we will, take on chapter 1 from next Sunday. But before we do that, like we always do, we will chant at least 10 times the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. So you see, it's very, very simple. It's not difficult at all. So if we can chant every day, that'll be wonderful, and we will see the results also. So I'm going to end here, and we'll see if anyone has any questions or comments. You are welcome to ask.